There is a strange law that governs human nature. The harder you pursue something, the farther it moves away from you. People chase love and become ignored. They chase success and become exhausted. They chase approval and lose themselves completely. And then they wonder why life feels empty despite all the effort. But power has never belonged to the person who begs for attention. Power belongs to the one who no longer needs it. Machiavelli understood that desire makes men vulnerable. The moment the world sees what you desperately want, it gains control over you. Your emotions become predictable. Your behavior becomes reactive. Your peace becomes dependent on outcomes you cannot control. This is why kings remained calm while peasants panicked. This is why powerful people move slowly while desperate people rush. One understands value, the other fears loss. The truth is dangerous but liberating. Everything begins to come toward you the moment you stop chasing it with desperation. Because detachment creates gravity, silence creates mystery, patience creates authority. And once you understand this principle, your entire life changes. 1. Desperation repels everything you desire. Look carefully at the people who lose the most in life, and you will notice one pattern that connects all of them. Desperation. The desperate man speaks too much, explains too much, tries too hard, and in the process reveals his weakness to the world. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something terrifying about human nature. People are not attracted to neediness, they are attracted to power. And desperation is the fastest way to destroy the image of power. Think about it. The moment you desperately want someone's attention, your behavior changes. You begin checking your phone every minute. You overanalyze messages. You start chasing approval with invisible chains wrapped around your mind. The same thing happens with money, success, status, and recognition. The more emotionally dependent you become on getting something, the more control that thing gains over you. And people can sense it instantly. A desperate person radiates fear, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being ignored. Even if they smile on the outside, their actions expose the truth. They become impatient, reactive, emotional, predictable. And predictable people are easy to manipulate. Machiavelli believed that power belongs to the one who controls emotions, not the one controlled by them. This is why kings stayed calm while everyone else panicked. Because calmness signals abundance, desperation signals scarcity. The irony is brutal. The harder you chase respect, the less respected you become. The harder you chase love, the more invisible you feel. The harder you chase success out of fear, the more exhausted and empty you become inside. Human beings are naturally drawn toward what appears difficult to control. This is why silence creates curiosity. This is why confidence attracts attention. This is why the personal, on who can walk away peacefully, often becomes the most powerful person in the room. 2. Detachment creates invisible power. There is a form of power that cannot be bought, forced, or imitated. It is silent, invisible, almost magnetic, and most people never discover it because they spend their entire lives chasing instead of detaching. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that the person who needs nothing from others becomes impossible to control. The moment you stop depending on validation, attention, or approval, your presence changes completely. People begin to feel something different around you. Think about the individuals who naturally command respect the moment they enter a room. They are rarely the loudest people. They are not begging for attention. They are not trying to impress everyone with endless explanations. Their strength comes from emotional independence. They are comfortable with silence, comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable walking away. That is what makes them dangerous. Detachment does not mean you stop caring about your goals. It means your peace no longer depends on immediate results. You still desire success, love, and achievement, but you are no longer emotionally enslaved by them. And this changes your energy in ways people can sense instantly. When a man becomes detached, he stops reacting impulsively. He stops forcing conversations. He stops chasing people who ignore him. He stops lowering his standards just to avoid loneliness. Instead of seeking approval, he begins observing human nature calmly, and in that calmness he gains control. Machiavelli believed emotions cloud judgment. The emotional man reveals his weaknesses too quickly, but the detached man remains unreadable. And unreadable people hold power because nobody can predict their next move. This is why the world often chases those who are willing to let go. Because detachment creates mystery. It creates confidence. It creates the illusion of abundance. When people see that you are afraid to lose them, they begin fearing the possibility of losing you instead. 3. Chasing validation destroys identity. One of the most dangerous prisons in this world has no walls, no chains, and no guards. Yet millions of people live inside it every single day. It is the prison of validation, the constant need to be accepted, admired, praised, and approved by others. And Niccolò Machiavelli understood that the moment a person depends on public approval, they stop living as themselves and begin performing for the crowd. Look around carefully. Most people are no longer making decisions based on truth or purpose. They are making decisions based on reactions. They change their personality to fit into rooms. They silence their opinions to avoid criticism. They fake confidence online while secretly fearing judgment from strangers who will forget them tomorrow. And slowly, piece by piece, they lose their identity. Validation is addictive because it gives temporary emotional relief. Accomplishment makes you feel valuable for a moment. Attention makes you feel important for a moment. Approval makes you feel safe for a moment. But the problem with living for validation is that your self-worth becomes controlled by people whose opinions constantly change. Today, they praise you. Tomorrow, they ignore you. Machiavelli believed that rulers who depended too heavily on public affection eventually became weak, because fear of losing approval makes people compromise their principles. The same thing happens in modern life. The more desperate you become for acceptance, the more you betray your authentic self just to maintain attention. You begin censoring your thoughts. You begin acting instead of living. You begin chasing applause instead of building character. And eventually you wake up realizing you have spent years becoming someone the world wanted instead of someone you truly respected. The powerful individual moves differently. They do not seek constant reassurance from others because they already understand their own value. They can tolerate criticism. They can survive rejection. They can stand alone without collapsing emotionally. And that ability terrifies people because someone who no longer needs approval becomes impossible to manipulate. 4. Silence and patience attract more than force. Most people destroy their own power because they cannot tolerate silence. The moment they feel ignored, they react. The moment they feel misunderstood, they explain. The moment they feel challenged, they rush to defend themselves. And in doing so, they reveal insecurity without realizing it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that patience is not weakness. Silence is not passivity. In many situations, silence is strategy. Powerful people do not feel the need to constantly prove themselves. Think about it carefully. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The person desperately trying to convince everyone of their value usually doubts it internally. But the individual who remains calm, observant, and emotionally controlled creates an entirely different effect. Their silence creates tension. Their patience creates mystery. People begin projecting importance onto them because they are not fighting for attention. This is why silence attracts more than force. When you constantly chase outcomes, argue with critics, or force people to understand you, you appear emotionally dependent on their reactions. And dependence destroys authority. Machiavelli knew that rulers maintained influence by remaining composed under pressure. The moment a leader became overly emotional or reactive, people sensed weakness immediately. Patience also gives you something most people never possess: clarity. Emotional people make impulsive decisions. They speak too quickly. They react too quickly. They ruin opportunities because they cannot control temporary feelings. But patience allows you to observe human nature before making a move. It allows you to recognize manipulatio, hidden intentions and emotional traps that desperate people walk into blindly. There is also another brutal truth about life. People value what feels difficult to obtain. When you are always available, always explaining yourself, always seeking resolution, your presence loses weight. But when you become patient enough to let silence do the work, people begin wondering about you. They begin thinking about you. They begin moving toward you without force because calmness carries a psychological power that desperation never will. 5. When you master yourself, the world responds differently. The greatest victory in life is not controlling other people. It is controlling yourself. Because the man who cannot govern his emotions will always become a servant to circumstances, reactions, and fear. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than most people alive today. He knew that true power does not begin in kingdoms, money, or influence. It begins in the mind. The moment you master yourself, the world starts responding to you differently. People can sense emotional discipline immediately. A person who remains calm under pressure creates psychological authority without saying a word. While others panic, react, complain, and seek external reassurance, the self-controlled individual stays composed. And composure is rare in a world addicted to emotional chaos. Think about how most people live. Their mood changes based on messages, opinions, attention, and temporary outcomes. One compliment makes them feel worthy. One rejection destroys their confidence. One setback makes them question their entire future. Their emotions are constantly controlled by external events. That is not power. That is slavery disguised as normal life. Machiavelli believed that those who ruled effectively understood emotional restraint. They did not reveal every feeling. They did not react impulsively to insults or pressure. Because every uncontrolled reaction gives other people information about your weaknesses. But when you master yourself, something fascinating happens. You stop chasing people for validation. You stop forcing outcomes out of fear. You stop begging life to move according to your timeline. Instead,